gotta cut me a little bit of slack. I didn't have an Iron Man shirt, so it's gonna be X-Men today. Well, I finally did the thing that every action figure collector is supposed to do at least every couple months. For me, it's probably only gonna be like once a year. I went to Los Angeles and I went to Frank & Son's collectible show and I bought a bunch of action figures. This, I feel, is sort of a rite of passage for action figure collecting. It's like you go, you find out all the cool new stuff that's coming out, you buy the Maximum Series Spider-Man, you show that you can participate in the action figure community, and then you go home, you make a lot of videos with the stuff you bought. And I did buy a bunch of cool stuff there, but I'm not actually interested in talking about that stuff as much as I am the theme of today's video. See, even though it's not my favorite character, there is somebody that I have just bought so many action figures of over the years, and I thought, why not talk about what I think makes a good action figure of this character? So yes, at Frank & Son's, I did get a new one, but I also want to talk about all the other ones I have and some new ones I just recently got. We're even going to unbox this guy and talk about how it might be just a little bit racist. You'll see what I mean. So this is the worst Iron Man action figure I think they've ever made. And trust me, because these are the other ones I've tried, along with two more that we're going to talk about at the end of this video. A lot of these are really tiny. They're like this mini version of the figure. I have quite a few of these, and I got them all at once a couple years ago. I was at Time Travelers, Cards, Comics, and Collectibles in Berkeley, Michigan, a shop that I love. They recently moved locations, and I've not been to the new location, but I hear it's pretty cool. And I noticed that they had about 1 million of these things in the case, and I thought, can I buy all of these at once, and maybe they would cut me a discount? And sure enough, they did. I think I got them for like $1 or $2 each. They're just a bunch of small ones from over the years that they've made, and it was really fun to collect them all at once. It actually helped me identify a couple dominant trends in action figure collecting for Iron Man that have led to why I have bought so many different versions. Obviously, he's had a lot of different armors over the course of many years, so it's cool to get different versions of that armor, but having all these small scale ones helped me figure out which ones I actually like and which ones I don't like, and what qualities about them I don't like. For instance, these two figures are very similar to each other, but there's a very distinct difference. One of them is high gloss arms and legs and armor, and the other one is matte finish. So it's still red and yellow. The suits are all identical, but high gloss versus matte finish. And that made me think about, what do I like in a figure? I think I prefer a matte finish look, because even though glossy is definitely how he looks in the comics, it's cool to see that in a matte finish you get the real vibrancy of the yellow, and it looks straight off the page of a comic book. So in that same vein, there's this guy here, which has some of the elements of that, but it's a little bit further along into Iron Man's journey. And I don't really like this design. I don't like the big shoulder pads. I don't like the fact that it's more orange than yellow. I think it's just not consistent with my vision of Iron Man, so I don't buy anything that looks somewhat like this. By the same token, this dude is not my style at all. There's way too much red here. I prefer to really be reminded that a lot of this is this fluid metal texture that's yellow, and something that's mostly red with some yellow highlights just doesn't do it for me. It's not the design that I like. Interestingly, though, I don't mind this one at all. I like the silver highlights on this. I can't remember any of the names of the suits in terms of the number over the years, so I'm a really, really bad source when people say, oh, well, the Mark 8 is my favorite from the MCU. I go, I don't know which one that is. Just describe it in different terms. But this is the Iron Man 2 one where he fights Whiplash at the racetrack, and I like this suit design. I like the silver. Even though I prefer yellow on the suit, it's still a cool design. I like the way that the chest plate is all connected to the shoulders, and it's neat. There's a couple really weird ones in the bunch. This one is definitely more of like an early 2000s Iron Man. This looks a lot like he did during the original Civil War run, and then this one just sort of a tactical, heavy-duty, muted, gray, dull metal tones. Interesting, but not my style either. I like that it kind of looks more abstract and it looks a little bit less practical, but like cooler all around. But to me, it's like, it's not classic Iron Man, so I don't really care for it. Now let's talk about this, the worst Iron Man action figure ever made. Now, one little caveat is that I don't have the faceplate that originally goes to this figure, so I don't own it in its complete version, and maybe if I did, it would be redeemed a little bit, and I would think it's cool, but I just cannot believe that that's the case. To me, there's a couple things that make this failure as an action figure. One is the fact that it's really bright silver. I want it to look like something that actually could have been salvaged and built in a cave, and I like the Mark 1. I think that armor design is pretty cool, and it's a very classic Avengers look, but it doesn't look good in this form. Having the head inside the helmet, and it's just like a clean, pristine Tony Stark head, and then the whole body is like in good shape. Any of the scuffs on this figure are from me owning it over the years. It comes like in a very, very clean silver, and I just don't like that. I don't really care for that. I want it to feel a little bit weathered. I want it to feel like he actually made it in a cave. And also, it's hardly posable at all. It's really bad. The most posable part of it are the fact that it has highly articulated fingers, which I've always found really bizarre. It's just a detail that I don't think is necessary for a figure like this, when like good hand sculpts on a robotic looking figure are always going to look cool. And because it's all posed fingers and everything, there's no holes for any like laser effects or propulsion effects to go in there. So overall, it's just a weird figure that I don't really care for. I think the hole in the back is for a rocket launcher or a jetpack to go on there, but I never had that piece. I got this out of a discount bin somewhere, so I don't like it. I will say the bottom of his feet has holes to put in effects for him to fly, which is pretty cool, but he's too heavy to be held up by most figure displays that would make him float, so I don't see the appeal here. However, Hasbro did something perfect and replaced this figure with the far superior Iron Man Mark 1. So let's talk about that figure. Now, I got this recently. I was not actively looking for it, but I found it for cheap online, and I thought I can't really pass up a chance to own a Mark 1 that I actually am proud to own. I really like this figure. Here's the things about it that make it different. For one, it is actually weathered, so the design has pieces of it that look scuffed and broken and bent as though it were actually made in a cave, which is a small detail, but when this entire suit hinges on the idea that it was made in a cave by this guy, it should look like that. It's not supposed to be a suit that sees like decades and decades of use. It's not supposed to be something that's really been machined to perfection. It's something that is like messy and made loosely in a cave. The arc reactor being blue, that's a much better detail than the other one, which is yellow. I don't like that this is yellow. The new one's blue. I like that. The head sculpt, the face, it doesn't come off. This is the head. That's perfect, because I don't care to see Tony Stark in there. I don't need to see that at all. All I need is the Mark 1 armor. The back looks great. It's a good design. It's much more posable. The hands are not articulated, but are actually good hand sculpts. The fingers are not articulated, I mean. And so it's good to have hand sculpts that are cool and that look awesome. The feet have two different holes, which is really nice because you can put him on a stand and he can have effects coming off of his feet, like smoke and lasers and propulsion jets and all that good stuff, which is very cool. So overall, this figure fixes all of the problems of the other Mark 1 and is great. It poses well and it looks great on display. Now we're getting into the real 1/12 scale figures, and I want to talk about a couple key differences here and how I approach buying movie tie-in figures, because Iron Man's a figure that has had a lot of movie appearances versus comic appearances. This Endgame Iron Man, I handed to my girlfriend a couple weeks ago because I was posing some action figures and she said I could come up with a pose for you, and this is the result that we got. So I've kept it in this pose because it's fun, it's funny. I don't know if I could have ever come up with something this unique. Now, when I was younger, the first comic series I ever bought regularly as it was coming out, I'd only been reading back issues my whole life and buying, vintage older stuff, but I started reading the All New, All Different Avengers in 2015. This was when the All New, All Different line from Marvel was the big push, and that was the comic series I read. It had the Falcon, and it had Thor, Jane Foster Thor, and a bunch of other Miss Marvel and Miles Morales, and the Iron Man in that was sort of down on his luck. He didn't have a lot of money, and he had redesigned his suit, and this is what it looked like. So a couple years ago, I found this figure and I thought, this is very nostalgic for me. I totally want to get this. And in many ways, this has been my definitive comic accurate Iron Man, even though it's not comic accurate in the way that like one of these smaller figures is that looks a lot more like the comics. This is comic accurate to the run that I really enjoy, which is the 2015 All New, All Different Avengers. So I like having a figure like this. It's well articulated. It's on a good Marvel Legends body. Not that old, like it's a newer wave of figures, but it articulates well. I'm really happy with this figure. It's dynamic, it's posable, it has all the necessary holes to put in effects on the hands for repulsor rays, it has the feet as well. It's good, I like it, I think it's a great figure. Now, ultimately, in the long term in my display, I'm not super interested in things looking very modern, which contradicts a little bit with some of the stuff that I have said, I am aware, but I am interested in having like vintage 60s and 70s looks for a lot of the characters. So while this is comic accurate to the comics I like, and I have included it in a lot of displays, and I've had it out for a long time, it ultimately doesn't serve my end goal for this, which is to create a display that when any comic fan sees it, they can say, oh, well, that is that character, that is Iron Man, that is Captain America. So this Iron Man, while it's really good, I have sort of distanced myself from in displays. I've shied away from including it in everything. And for the same reason, this figure is just one that I don't care for at all. This is the 2008 Iron Man, as far as I remember. Maybe it's from Iron Man 3. I can't tell the suits apart. But this Iron Man figure, I think it was like $1 or $1.50 somewhere in a discount bin. It's really, really scuffed up, really beat up. I have it because at that point, I already had this big Iron Man collection, and I thought, a movie tie-in figure would be kind of fun to have. But it barely stands up. The joints are weak. The articulation is bad. The hands don't swap. They're bad. I don't like movie tie-in figures. I don't buy them. Even this Endgame one that we'll talk about in a second, it It's just not my field. The only movie tie-in figure I regularly display is the Paul Rudd Ant-Man, and that's just because when you have the mask on it, it looks like a really good Ant-Man figure. And I have yet to see if there's a really good classic Ant-Man design, so I like that design, so I've been keeping it. But with this Iron Man, it's like I've never put this in a mainline display because all movie tie-in figures really stick out against comic book-based figures, and so I'm not interested in having this as a part of my display. It's just something I own because you might as well own it if you're going to have 100 Iron Man action figures. By that same token, this is the Avengers Endgame goofy pose Iron Man. I don't like this figure at all. I mostly got it because, you know, I already had a bunch of Iron Man figures, and I thought, hey, for posterity, might as well have one. But this thing, it's barely an action figure from a collector perspective. The legs don't move at all. There's one little swivel hinge on the arm, and the head turns, but ultimately you feel that this body could just have a Captain America head or a Paul Rudd Ant-Man head or anybody's head on it, and it would just be an Endgame figure. And that's sort of the idea, was that they churned these out because they all wore the same suit for the movie, and I don't like it. You could put a Black Widow head on this, it'd be exactly the same figure. It came with a really bizarre sculpted blast effect that only goes onto the one hand, so that means it can't be used with any other Iron Mans. It's really dumb. So I don't like this figure as a display piece, but when you've got a bunch of Iron Man figures and they're all lined up on a display, it is fun to have this one there because it's like, oh yeah, that was one of his really out there weird looks for one of the movies. So it's just like, it's fine if it's standing still, but it has zero utility as a real action figure. Finally, this is Ultimate Iron Man. I have bought a couple of figures from the wave that this released in. I bought the Adam Warlock. This is from the mini comic wave that they did. When I bought this figure, it was because I found a good deal on it at Target, and I thought I should get this figure because I should check. I should see how something this bulky and blocky poses, see how it looks and scales with the rest of my action figures. And I will say, even though this armor design is so far from what I associate with Iron Man, I really like this figure. I like the hand sculpts. They're really cool. It has holes to put repulsor rays in the hands, but they're just not posable enough for it to really look great. But what I'll say is this is an incredibly posable figure for what it is. One of the reasons for that is that the joints are sort of hidden in the machinery, so you have double jointed pinless elbows as well as double jointed knees, and they look really cool no matter how you pose it because of the way the armor is built. It looks goofy, but I think that that's like part of the appeal for a lot of the Ultimate Universe designs. They look very far afield of what we're used to in their very early 2000s, but this figure totally pulls it off. So once again, while I'd never use it as the primary Iron Man for my main display, I definitely think it's worth owning because it's just cool to have something that looks so different than the others, but is also recognizably still Iron Man. So up until pretty recently, this was my total collection of Iron Man action figures, meaning that there was a hole in the collection, and I needed one that was very definitively a simple, classic comic book Iron Man, and that's when I started researching what was out there. When you start digging around on the internet to find the definitive version of a character for an action figure display, a couple things usually happen. Either you'll go to subreddits and different communities and you'll find out that there is only one option. There's one definitive figure, and so you just look around for that one, but because there's only one good, clean, great version, it becomes expensive, it becomes rare, it becomes hard to find because it's the one that everybody wants. A really stupid example of this is the fact that for the Incredible Hulk, I don't think there is a definitive figure out right now except for the Maximum Series Hulk, and I hate the Maximum Series Hulk. I think it's like a bad action figure and there's no reason anybody should buy it, but I can understand the argument that there is not a better one. I have the Diamond Select Hulk in my display. I think it's the best Hulk action figure ever made, but my tastes and my reasons for believing that are so far different from what most people are looking for in an action figure. And that means that the figure is hard to find. It sells out quickly, people have it, they mark it up. When I went to Frankenstein's Collectibles, I saw multiple of them for like 80 bucks. The other thing that can happen when you're searching for a definitive version of a character is that there's no consensus about what that definitive version is. Like right now, this is happening with Thor. There's the 80th anniversary Thor action figure, and that is a good figure, but a lot of people speculate that there will be a Maximum Series Thor figure in the near future, so you might as well wait for that because likely it will be better than any of the previous ones we have. You could get the one from the 2-pack with the Destroyer, you could get the 80th anniversary, you could get any number of Thor action figures, but none of them feel quite definitive enough. So that means that when you're looking for a definitive Iron Man, there are a lot of options, and there is not a Maximum Series like there is for Deadpool or Spider-Man or the Hulk, so there isn't really one that people will point you to and say, you gotta get this one above all else. To me, this is a big fumbling on the part of Hasbro and Marvel Legends because Iron Man has such a popularity through the movies that it should be pretty easy to say, hey, we fixed the problem, here is the definitive Iron Man, it's got a lot of accessories, it's designed exactly like the comic books, it's for retro collectors, it's perfect. And I know that they're interested in not doing that because as soon as they make the definitive one, then nobody ever needs to buy one again, but I am surprised at how few options there are for a good comic accurate Iron Man. So pretty quickly, while I was shopping around for an Iron Man, there was one that came right to the top. That's the Secret Wars Iron Man from the Secret Wars wave that has the Beyonder and Symbiote Spider-Man and Captain America. The thing is, I already have the Symbiote Spider-Man and Captain America from that wave, and I love them. I think they're great figures and really, really close to incredibly definitive, perfect versions of those characters. Although I will never forgive Hasbro for the broken shield on the Captain America. I'm so angry about that. So before I went to LA and went to Frank & Sons, I thought, okay, I'm gonna keep an eye out for the Secret Wars Iron Man, and if I find one for a good price, I'll get it. That will fix my Iron Man collection. I'll be done. And then while I was there, a figure popped out to me that I had never seen mentioned when people talk about their definitive Iron Man action figure. This is the Tony Stark AI Iron Man action figure from Marvel Legends. The detail on this thing is incredible. It is the perfect sort of glossy but still sort of matte finish Iron Man that I have dreamed about for so long. Now, hilariously, it only comes with this blue hologram Star Wars Ki-Adi-Mundi looking head, Tony Stark head. But like I talked about earlier with the Mark I figure that I hate, I don't want a Tony Stark head on basically any action figure that I own. Any Iron Man, to me, it's like I want the helmet on. That's what's going to make it a cool figure. So I don't really care that it doesn't come with an actual Tony Stark head. This is the definitive Iron Man. So I picked this up at Frank & Sons and I added it to my collection. I put it in a little display and I added it to my overall display. And when I got home, I thought I should look up the Secret Wars, because is there any reason that I would not get that one, given that I have this, which to me feels like the best Iron Man I've ever owned? Now imagine my shock and awe when I realize that this is the exact same figure. I don't think there are any differences. Now, I decided to test this on camera with y'all here because I didn't really believe it when I got the figure in. I was holding up the Tony Stark AI one next to this and looking for any perceivable difference, but I'd like to get the two of them out at the same time, put them side by side, and blind test whether I can even tell the difference between the figures. Here's the reason I think this is important. This brings into question whether or not it is ever worth it to get a figure that is more expensive based on a couple of accessories or maybe the packaging. Because the Tony Stark AI one, it's easy to get. It's not expensive. You could go on eBay right now and get one for like 20 bucks. Whereas this is going to run you closer to 40, 45, no matter where you get it. And as far as I can tell, all you're really getting in this figure is roller skates, which, if you really care about roller skates, I guess, but I can't imagine any collector cares enough about roller skates to pay $20 extra for them. So let's do it. Let's get this one open and see if it's exactly the same as the Tony Stark AI figure. Getting these things out of the packaging is a big nightmare and not something I recommend anyone try at home, but I'm gonna do it. Okay, for the grand reveal, let's take the plastic off here and we'll get the figures right next to each other. Okay, before we talk accessories, I'm putting them right next to each other, and I do want to say I was wrong about one thing, which is that they're not identical in terms of color. The Secret Wars one, obviously, it is a lot brighter. It's a lot more vibrant. But what I'm going to say is that even though it is a different color, I do not think, I think this is a sort of unquantifiable difference when it comes to like displayability and it looking cool on a shelf. I don't think that it is as much brighter as it could be that would make enough of a difference. I think they are basically the same. And I'm looking really close at all the details on the sculpts here. I cannot find a single difference. The hands are the same, the wrists are the same. I think it's the exact same figure. The knees and the kneecaps are a little different, but I don't think they pose any differently. Let me test. Yeah, here they are in just about the same pose, and like, it's the same. I will say that the Tony Stark AI figure feels more solid. Like the yellow plastic on this one, it feels a little gummier. And I don't know if that's to do with age. I don't know if that's to do with anything about the plastic, but it does feel like this one is a little bit softer. And so I would be worried in the long term about the quality of the plastic. I know I'm complaining about the color here, but one of the details about the Secret Wars figure that I do appreciate, that I think that they got a little bit wrong with the Tony Stark AI, probably the only detail that I think wrong about this, is that the eyes on this Secret Wars one are actually white inside the helmet. There's little white lines painted in there. Now, from a QC perspective, this is bad because there's actually a little bit of blue paint smudged on the white line. It would never show up on camera because it's so incredibly small, but just for owning this figure, I do find that a little bit weird. To get a better look at the color issues here and the color contrast, I did just head swap them. So what I'm noticing is that when you put the Secret Wars head on the Tony Stark AI Iron Man, it really, really pops out that this is a different color face faceplate, and then it's a different yellow. Also, it's kind of loose, so I think the ball joints might be a different size on each figure, but it's proportional. It's just very drastically a different color of the head and faceplate on that body. Whereas on this one, I feel like it gels pretty well, so I think that the Tony Stark AI yellow is bright enough to kind of coexist in little touches here, but not in the reverse. And I ultimately feel like the yellow on Secret Wars is just a little bit too highlighter yellow to be an incredibly accurate Iron Man figure. But let's talk accessories, because with the Tony Stark AI, you get that alternate hologram AI head, and other than some jet propulsion / repulsor ray effects, you don't really get any accessories. And I think a lot of people point to the Secret Wars as having better accessories being the reason that they like it. But let's talk about them. This is the accessory tray here. Obviously, nobody cares about the Secret Wars lenticular shields. Nobody's displaying them with those. It's just part of the retro appeal that it's like an old part of a toy. I think it's dumb that they're in there, but hey, you know, they gotta include some bonus stuff so they can charge you double the price. Then you get a couple of different hand sculpts. You get this gun here that goes with one of the hand sculpts. Only one hand has a gripping hand. Now, thankfully, I've got plenty of alternate Iron Man hands from other stuff that I could use if I wanted both to have a grabbing, but I think it's odd that there's only one grabbing hand here. It's like, okay, well, I guess I only get to put the gun in that one hand. You obviously get two open hands as well with the figure to give sort of a hovering effect if you attach these repulsor rays, but again, you only get two of those, so you have to decide if they're going to go on the feet or if they're going to go on the hands. You get these two smoke effects, which I do think are pretty cool to add to the repulsor ray. It's sort of an ominous Iron Man charging up that repulsor ray with the open hand piece, but this is just not something I generally would incorporate into my own setup, my own display, but I see the appeal. Okay, you know what? After saying that, I put the effect on there, and that actually is really, really sick, so I do like it. I'm a fan of these smoke effects. And then, of course, the heavy hitters, the roller skates. This is the quirky, funny, retro thing that people love to talk about with this figure as what makes it, you know, so retro and feels so 80s, is that it has roller skates. That's just such a funny, quirky Iron Man thing to have. So with these on, here's my thoughts. One, they're hard to get on. They're cumbersome, they're gummy, they're annoying. They don't really go on the feet that well, so I don't see the appeal. It's not for me. I would never put it in my display. I get it as maybe quirky, funny little extra thing, but here's the thing. Having an accessory like this that is like funny and quirky and retro and whatever only works, I think, as a value proposition if everything else you could want in a figure is present here. Now, I'm not a fan of a Tony Stark head sculpt, but the fact that there is not one in this, to me, is like an indictment of the rollerblades. It's like, why have roller skates in this if you don't have a Tony Stark head sculpt? Because you know most collectors are going to want that at some point. Why not have like a couple flesh tone hands that you can have on the figure as well? And that's where we get into something interesting about this figure. This figure on the lenticular packaging has Tony Stark's face. You turn it and you can see Tony Stark's face. But on the back of the packaging, it makes reference to the fact that in the events of the original Secret Wars in the 1980s, there was something happening with Tony Stark's secret identity. Now, if you're a real comic reader, if you're like me, you know that that's because this was not Tony Stark. It was James Rhodes. It was Rhodey that was in the suit the whole time. So the fact that they sell an action figure of this character at a time where it makes a lot of sense to have a good Rhodey action figure of Iron Man, because we've had a bunch of Iron Mans that are Tony Stark, it doesn't make any sense to me that they did not include a Rhodey head sculpt. I know I said at the beginning of this video there might be a little bit of a racist undertone to this figure, and it's obviously a little hyperbolic to say that, but they missed a chance here to do something interesting with the action figure, which is have it be overtly clear that it's James Rhodes inside the suit. That helps to the fact that it's loyal to the original Secret Wars storyline. That connects with fans who are going to say, wow, they're not just interested in it being Tony Stark. Iron Man has been many people over the course of his time, so it makes sense to have a James Rhodes thing. The fact that I would have to kit bash this and head swap it to get a James Rhodes Iron Man, I think that is tragic. I think that's a bummer. And I don't know why they wouldn't take this chance to lean into it, especially when a perfectly good figure like the AI Tony Stark is one that you could issue with a regular painted Iron Man Tony Stark head, and you would have the same figure here, and then this could be Rhodey, and we would have exactly what we need as collectors. I think this is really dumb and sad, and I think that capitalizing on selling it as, oh, it's Tony Stark, clearly, because look at the lenticular shield, but then when you read the story and you read the back of the packaging itself, it's clear that it's James Rhodes. I think that is cheap, and I think Hasbro needs to stand up a little bit more for the fact that it's not all nostalgia bait when it's not even loyal to the thing it's being nostalgic for. So do I think that the Secret Wars Iron Man is the one you should get, or do I think it's this one? Honestly, between the two, I think it's pretty clear from what I'm saying. I think you should get the Tony Stark AI. It's cheaper, it's better, it has less accessories, sure, but the accessories you get with this are just not worth it. This plastic feels better. It doesn't feel like it's about to break. Just while making this video, I've been trying to bend this thing and pose it, and it does feel like it's gonna snap. This feels a lot more like a comic accurate Iron Man, but if you want a figure that's actually from the story of Secret Wars, this isn't even the figure for you. That means they haven't made a definitive one from that arc, because this is clearly supposed to be Tony Stark, even though that's not who was in the original story. Look, collecting all the figures of a certain character, it can be a kind of pointless endeavor, because they're always going to be chasing, making money off of people by making a million different versions of a character and never letting all of it go into one figure, because if it did, then everyone would buy that one and it would be over forever. And when they do make a definitive one, they don't make enough of them, so they become rare. And that has happened with figures over the years, but for Iron Man, there's a particular problem, which is that the more versions you make, the more people are going to buy, because they don't want a definitive one, they want all the different Iron Mans there have been. It's a character whose design is as inconsistent as it is frequent. Every time he appears, he's optimized the suit, he's changed things. So you could even make the argument that these two figures that I'm reviewing in this video, they are the same guy, they're just different versions of the character. You know, he upgraded the colors and changed the colors between suits. You could make that argument. For a collector like me, though, I'm looking for something that conjures the mental image of the character at a particular time, and ultimately, even though both of these kind of do it, the AI one, it absolutely does it much more, and more importantly, it does it at the right price point. Although, if you do want my thoughts on the true definitive Iron Man action figure ever made, of course it's going to be this. It's going to be the 12-inch Marvel Legends. This is a stellar figure. This thing is awesome. I can't recommend it enough, but I didn't talk about it in this video because it's like, this doesn't fit with any other display. This is a really cool Iron Man, and I love it. I love the accessories, and it's gigantic, but it doesn't really go in with anything else. You can't just put this in your regular 6-inch Legends display because it's so big. So I do recommend this one, but we'll talk about it some other time, I'm sure. If within the next couple months or years or whatever, there's a Maximum Series Iron Man that comes out, I want you to come back to this video, because I think it's important for us to talk about the way that even though they're seeking accuracy or fan service or comic accuracy, Hasbro is trying to get your money. So they're always going to tease out a version of the character that looks really good, and then they're going to give it a big handicap. And I think in the case with Secret Wars, it's that it's not actually comic accurate. It doesn't have the kind of accessories that should compel you to buy it. And ultimately, it doesn't look as good as you might think it does in the packaging. So until I make my way down to Frank & Sons Collectibles again in LA sometime, and I find a new Iron Man I didn't know existed, I will be rocking the Tony Stark AI figure. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.